Welcome to day 1 of Let's Get Exam Ready, 30 days of expert insights to help boost your confidence for your upcoming DP Psychology exam. Over the next 30 days, there'll be small and regular expert insights which you can review regularly to help you prepare for your psychology exam. Our insights will be relevant for HL and SL, and as you can see, it's worth spending a lot of time focusing on paper 1 as it's worth the biggest weighting for both SL and HL. And here's the plan of everything we'll cover over the next 30 days. Let's get started with the first unit from paper 1, the biological approach. This unit is broken down into 3 topics. However, note that this does not include the high-level extension topic. This will be covered in a future video. The 3 topics are further broken down into 9 subtopics, and it's important to remember that we need to revise each of these subtopics, and we also need to remember the importance of research methods and ethics in relation to each of the topics. When revising for psychology, students often place a lot of emphasis on revising studies, but we also need to remember in both short and essay response questions, we need to be demonstrating knowledge, and in essay response questions, critical thinking is also important. Let's look at how we could revise the first topic from the biological approach. We can see that we've got the 4 subtopics broken down, and next to each subtopic is a column called Key Terms and Concepts. So before even thinking about the studies, we're making some notes about the key knowledge that we know about these subtopics. You can see I've put some notes here about 2 different techniques used to study the brain, and I've chosen 2 very different techniques just in case I get an essay about this subtopic that asks me to evaluate or contrast techniques. I've got 2 very different ones. Just some key words here that will help me remember to show knowledge about these subtopics. And just a note about the terms in black. These are terms that can only be included in short answer questions. Next, I think about the studies relevant for each of the subtopics. The general rule is to have 1 study for each short answer question and 2 studies for each essay response question. So I want to make sure that I've got at least 2 studies in each of the subtopic boxes. And you can see that studies can be used in multiple boxes. So Maguire, for example, could be used in the subtopic about techniques and could also be used in the subtopic about neuroplasticity. And finally, I think about the research methods and ethics that are most applicable to this topic. So I have a range of research methods that are used in psychology. And when I look at the studies that I've maybe put into the studies column, I would be thinking about what are the main methods that have been used to investigate the brain and behaviour. It's very clear that experiments are a very common method. Now that only gives me 1 though, so it would be good to make sure that I also have another example of a method in case again an essay comes up about the methods when we investigate the brain and behaviour. So I might, for example, then think about, okay, I don't want to have just all experiments in my column for studies. Maybe I'll have a case study. Then I could talk about a case study and experimental method if I get the question about research methods in relation to the brain and behaviour. If I get asked about ethics, well, here are my choice of all the ethical considerations. And again, I would look at my studies and I would think, what are the most relevant ethical considerations in relation to research in relation to these studies? So when Maguire was doing her research into the brain and behaviour, what were the key ethical considerations that she had to adhere to, which were really important for that study? And then I could make a selection. It's unlikely that I'll be able to do all of these in an essay, and in a short answer question I'd probably just focus on 1 unless the question asks for more than that. But I really would narrow this down to particular ones that are most relevant to the research that I've got in my studies column, and then I can use the research to help link to the ethical considerations that I choose to focus on. So making a table like this could help you revise your first topic, the brain and behaviour, from the biological approach. It's important to make sure that when you're answering your questions, you are specifically linking your responses to a human behaviour. So unless you are being asked about animal research, for example, in the high-level extension, you should always use human research and make sure your responses are linking to a specific human behaviour. Another way you can show knowledge in your responses is to use psychological terminology. One of my students calls these fancy words. So in honour of her, here are some fancy words that are relevant to the brain and behaviour. If you're not aware of what they mean, Then do some research, learn about them, and when relevant, include them in your responses to allow you to demonstrate knowledge, and some of these might also be relevant for your critical thinking. And finally, here are some practice questions for the topic of the brain and behaviour. Plan them out. Think about what studies you would include, how you would demonstrate knowledge, and in the essay response questions, how would you demonstrate critical thinking? Planning out responses is a great way to revise. See you tomorrow for more expert insights for DP psychology.